Hey there, Michael Church with Crawl Space Ninja, and today we've got a great question from Randy. He contacted us through our Ask a Ninja submission page on our website, which we're going to put a link down below so you can do that if you like, so stay tuned. Okay, go right ahead.
I've got a dirt crawl space, and there's never any standing water. I do have a high water table in my area. I dug a hole into the crawl space about a foot deep, and it never fills with water, so I know I haven't hit the water table yet. Anyway, it's like the dirt in the crawl space is always moist, never any standing water.
Okay.
And I've run a dehumidifier down there for probably about a month and a half now, and the dehumidifier takes a lot of humidity out. The soil is still wet. Now I'm wondering, I've heard of something called wicking, and I'm wondering if that might be my problem. The groundwater seeping up into the top of the dirt crawl space.
Right. Okay. So what's going on is you have put in a dehumidifier. Is it a dirt floor? In other words, there's not plastic. You don't have any plastic down. Is that correct?
Right. That's correct.
Okay. So the dehumidifier is controlling humidity and doing a good job doing that. Is it keeping it under 60%?
No, it's closer to 70%.
Okay. Wicking is certainly a possibility, and just keep in mind that if you have vents, for example, that are open in a crawl space, all right, I'm just going to switch gears a little bit, and so let's say you have a crawl space and all the vents around the crawl space are open, and you put in a dehumidifier and it's 70%, 80% humidity outside, and then you attempt to lower the humidity in the crawl space, the humid air is going to force itself into the crawl space faster because it's chasing the dry air. Okay, does that make sense?
Okay.
Okay.
I understand that.
Yeah. So I think that's probably what's going on with your soil, is that as you attempt to lower the humidity in the crawl space, it's fighting a losing battle. It's never going to get rid of all the soil moisture, because then it'll just come right back. So that's why we put the plastic down. The plastic, we call it a vapor barrier. Some people say vapor retarder, but basically it's just plastic. It's a class 1 vapor barrier is what they call it. And it basically, what it does is it slows the evaporation down. So in other words, it's creating a separation between the dry air and the soil. Okay. Now the plastic does not stop the vapor from evaporating through it, which is what the perm rating is all about. So basically the perm rating means that it either flows slow or fast through the plastic. That's all it is. Okay. So you'll never stop the evaporation from the soil, ever. Especially if you're near a lake, like you said you are, right? You said you have a high water table, you're near water?
Yes.
Yeah. So I've had houses on the side of mountains that's had high water table because of a spring or something nearby. So you're always going to be fighting that evaporation from the soil. So I would encourage you to put down a good plastic. Now you can just put it down on the ground, just that way it slows the evaporation. And I think if you do that, if you're using a pretty decent dehumidifier, that should help get that humidity below 60%, because you're slowing that evaporation down. Okay.
Right.
And you want the humidity below 60%. I prefer 50, but you at least want it below 60, because if it stays above 60, it still has a potential to spawn some fungal growth. Okay. And that's really, you don't want that to happen either. What kind of dehumidifier are you using?
It's a Black & Decker 30 pint.
30 pint?
30 pint.
Okay. And how big of a space?
Dehumidifier.
Okay. And how big is the crawl space?
Oh, it's about 20 foot by 20 foot.
Okay, about 400 square feet. Okay, so technically that probably is sized properly by the time, you know, I think a 30 pint could do about 300 to 400 square feet. But keep in mind, those are designed for finished areas. So in other words, either a slab down in a basement or something like that, which is also slowing the evaporation from the soil. So I think if you put in a plastic, it will make that dehumidifier run less and become more efficient. Because I'm assuming it's not stopping; it's probably running all the time, right?
It is all 24 hours a day.
Yeah, because it's trying to keep up with
my
your hot
electric
water.
bill's going to be.
Yeah, we just did a meeting with a video with Brian Canfield of April Air, and he covers some of the box store dehus and how they do use more energy because they don't run as efficiently. So I think he said like an April Air 1820 compared to 30, 40, or 30 to 50 to 70 pint box store dehu, it'd save you about $110 a month or a year. I'm sorry, $110 a year. Just because, like you said, it never shuts off. It's running 24/7 because it can't keep up. So, but I think putting plastic down would be a great way to help that dehu become more efficient.
Okay, I was just wondering if the dehumidifier wasn't evaporating drawing out the humidity, and then through the wicking process, it was just being replaced again.
That is correct. I think that's what's going on, Randy. I think you got it.
Yeah. All right. And a French drain probably wouldn't help me if there's no standing water.
No, no. I mean, some crawl space companies, they just automatically put in a French drain, and we encourage, what you would call a French drain to a sump pump, especially if you haven't owned the house for very long, because, we just had last year, I think in 2017, we had like one of the biggest rainstorms. It was like 7-8 days straight of rain. And there were crawl spaces that had never flooded before, and they flooded, So you never know what's going to happen. So in that sense, I understand encouraging everyone to get a French drain and a sump pump in a crawl space. But from what you're telling me, that will not fix or help your situation, okay? Because you don't have any standing water. Now, 3-4 years down the road, if you went ahead and put one in and then your crawl space floods, you're covered. But stopping the evaporation, I would go with a vapor barrier first.
All right. We did have a problem back in March, a minor flood. And this is the only time I've ever had, in 19 years, the only time I've ever had standing water in the crawl space.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And the water actually wasn't coming in from the wall area. It was bubbling up through the dirt.
Through the dirt, right.
Yeah, it was actually bubbling up through the middle of the floor and through the dirt.
Well, keep in mind, too, another part of the French drain is a vapor barrier. Because if you don't have a good plastic down and have it attached to where it won't bubble up above the plastic, so in other words, it's overlapped and taped properly, that plastic helps to keep the water under the vapor barrier in order to push it to either your sump pump or your French drain, okay? Because once it gets above that plastic, it may not ever make it to your French drain because now it's separated from where it needs to be in order to migrate to the French drain, you see? So you got to have it installed properly for the French drain even to work also. So. Right.
All right. So would you recommend a French drain and a vapor barrier?
Well, if you were here in Knoxville, I would certainly let you know that I would recommend a French drain, and you can choose not to do it. But just keep in mind that if you were going to hire us and then you take flooding, your crawl space floods, and you told me, Michael, I don't want a French drain, well, then you change your mind. Now I got to go rip all the plastic out that we put in, which costs more money, to put the French drain in. So I think I would err on the side of caution in your situation and go ahead and put one in. I mean, 400 square feet, the material isn't going to be that much if you're going to do it yourself.
Right.
So.
Right. Okay. Well, Michael, I thank you very much.
Well, we thank you too, Randy, and thanks again for letting us have you on our YouTube channel, okay? Hope you have a great day.
Okay, you too.
Thanks. Bye-bye. Well, Randy, it was great talking to you about potential wicking of moisture out of the ground and vapor barriers and French drains. We had a great conversation. I really appreciate you taking time to help educate everyone out there in the world that has questions just like yours. And appreciate everyone watching, and we hope you make it a happy and blessed day. And I hope you like this video down below, and we'll see you next time. God bless, and we'll see you later.